All right, testing 1 2 3 1 2 3. I think we are good to
Testing.
go.
Hello?
Hello, hello.
Okay, I think it works. Well, in that sense, welcome to the first iteration of the Hang In There podcast with AJ and me.
Indeed. Hello, everyone.
Good evening or good afternoon, whatever time zone you're in.
Indeed, it is currently 7 p.m. in Austria with a lovely temperature of 20 degrees Celsius. So, yeah, we're enjoying ourselves here for now.
Better than yesterday, for sure.
Oh God, I can attest to that one.
Well, our today's topic is going to be growing up in different countries or cultures generally. Like, for the first time, I'm sitting here with a person who's from Kuwait, like from the Middle East.
I am not American. I have fooled many.
Yeah, as maybe his accent might suggest
Yeah.
he's actually not American. But yeah, I'm personally, as most of the people listening to this podcast probably are going to know, I was born in Canada and I grew up in Austria for most of my life. I'm now 20, so 17 of 20 years I grew up here. So I'm pretty much a European, you could say. So I grew up in Austria, not Australia. This is a country below Germany. I think we're kind of famous for our classical music like Mozart and stuff. And yeah, if you don't know where it is, please look it up. But
Yeah, fair enough. Oh yeah. I mean, I've remembered I was with you once, and there was one guy who did generally think it was Australia. It was on virtual reality. It was kind of. It's funny how you have to keep clearing it up. I have to be honest, but yeah, a little bit about me. Yeah, my name's AJ. That's not my real name, but we'll go with that because my real name is a pain to say for the English tongue.
you still want to try saying it?
No, I'm good. Maybe some other time. But yeah, so I'm AJ. I'm from Kuwait, born and raised, full, purebred Arab here. And yeah, I come from what people like to call it hell. I've made it my home, which is nice. So yeah, two very different cultures. One that is European and one that is Arab. Like today I'm at Dan's place, and yeah, Europe has been very interesting so far.
Yeah. So you're basically from the country where most of stuff is yellow and blue, and here it's green and blue or green and gray for the biggest part, right?
Yeah, pretty much at this point. I mean, you wake up in the morning, right? Going to university as an example. You get up, shower, make a coffee, make some breakfast, if you have the time, that is. Get in your car, and oh, by the way, with the car, you have to turn it on like 5 minutes prior before you get in. So I'd go like by the window where my dining table is, and there's like this little gap where I can see my car. And my car's keys, you can like turn the car on from like far away. So
Right.
I let the air conditioning go before I do anything. But yeah. So yeah, you get in the car, all you see is yellow everywhere. You'd see a little bit of traffic here and there. There's trees on the highway,
Yeah.
but it's like for like 5 kilometers, and then the next 20 is just sand.
Mhm.
But yeah, it also depends where you live. But mostly, if you're going to be on the highway, yeah, you're just going to see a lot of industrialized buildings and
Right.
houses.
Right.
There's not really a lot of greenery in a sense, but can't complain. At least the economy is functional here. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I think I don't have to go into details of like how life is in Europe because I suppose most people listening to this are going to be from European parts or like
Yeah.
American at least. But yeah, maybe you can elaborate. How is it like growing up, like religion wise? Like, how can you imagine like being born into a family there? Like what is typical for you growing up there?
Well, I was born in October 20th, 2002 in Kuwait, and it was in the evening. And growing up, it was alright. I mean, I got all I need, really. I was spoiled to an extent, but not too spoiled. So my dad, he did like a reward system with me. So something I'd achieve in real life, like studies or, got a trophy or some kind, he'd
Mm-hmm.
reward me with that achievement that I got, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in a sense, that's how I get spoiled, quote unquote. But that I was spoiled like most of anything that I wanted. I could have asked until I was like 13,
Right.
and then after 13, I'd have to like start working for my stuff. And I gotta be honest, my dad never really said no to most things, even after I was 13. So he's always been providing me with all that I need. But I try not to ask him because I feel embarrassed. Because, and it's not really religion; it's more for a culture. We don't like asking people for help in a sense because we feel like it's disrespectful or we keep annoying the said person and so on and so on and so on. So we try to avoid asking for help or support of any kind.
Mm.
So we do the good old quote unquote man up,
Man up
yeah, but push through it.
procedure.
Yeah, you'll be fine. It's like yeah, and most of the times it is fine because it's better to, in my opinion, it's better to solve the problem yourself than
Right.
have other people solve it for you. Because that way, if you just depend on people so much, and something big that happened and nobody will be by your side, then yeah, what are you gonna do then?
Mm.
Right. So, yeah, I just try to. Yeah. So the Kuwaiti culture, the best way I can describe it is, we are hospitable. So
Yeah.
there is that rule that I told you, like a long time ago, where if there was a guest that would enter a house, the guy who owns the house would, invite him. He would invite him for food. He'd give him a bed, somewhere to sleep, and then after 24 hours, they're like, okay, why are you here?
Are you here?
Yeah, they wouldn't ask that question. They would just invite him in and whatnot. So yeah, so first thing, Kuwaitis or Arabs in general are hospitable, right? Secondly, we have a very strong social bonding with one another.
Mhm.
Like in Kuwait, we have a population of 4 million, and 3 million of those are not even Kuwaiti, like workers who come here to earn money. The 1 million is made of Kuwaitis, and if you think of 4 million, it's not really a lot
Yeah.
in a sense, like for a country. So everyone kind of knows each other here in terms of, oh, he's this family. He's from this family, so yeah, I know his parents and I know his grandfather or his, aunt or uncle or whatnot. So yeah, that's one of those things which is interesting actually, which is nice. But the problem is that kind of thing does have its own issues where people start bad mouthing. I'm not saying all, but there's select few that do that. But yeah,
So basically, every family has a certain reputation, which they are
yeah.
known
I mean,
for. in the
look,
family.
all Kuwaiti families generally are known to be nice. There's no bad family in a sense. Everyone is nice. Everyone is hospitable, respectful. In that sense, and I'm proud to even say that they're all great, and that those families should be proud of what they've achieved
Right.
and whatnot. So yeah, Kuwaiti families are great, but there's always this outside group that comes from somewhere,
Mhm.
kind of whispers bad omens into someone's ear,
Mhm.
and then it starts like a whole lot of trouble. But if we catch that pretty quick, we can shut it down immediately.
How do you do that?
We just ask, like we ask around, like
Like, what the hell?
yeah, it's like, okay, so this person did this, said, he did this, and this. Where's your proof?
Yeah.
Right. And then people who don't have any proof would usually just stay quiet, or they're like,
Okay.
do that kind of thing. And you're like, yeah,
Sure.
yeah, there you go. So yeah,
Okay. Well, going back to like growing up, like I remember you telling me like your father educated you in certain ways as a child. Like, how would you describe that? Like, how do you, like, if you do something bad, how would like someone react to like?
so my dad, when I did something bad, first of all, he wouldn't like immediately get angry. Like I never seen anger out of him most of the time. Well, most of the times. When I did something that is really bad, then yeah, I don't blame him for being angry because that said thing I did was stupid. But he'd usually see the problem, and instead of telling me what the problem is, he'd ask me questions. He's like, okay, why do you think I'm mad at you? Why do you think this is wrong? And then he'd leave me sitting there figuring it out. Takes time, but I usually figure it out. Then once I figure it out, he's like, okay, so you know why this is wrong, and even if this is wrong, why did he do it? And of course, when I'm a kid, you just do things that, you don't know what you're talking about. Or what you just do it without thinking, in a sense. So, yeah, and the third thing, he would explain to me why this is bad, and how I can stop doing it if it's a reoccurring thing, or how to avoid it in a sense so it can never happen again. And that's usually how I've been dealt with. Like as an example, with my studies, I was not very good in middle school. So he would tell me, "Why are you not like studying? Like, what's the problem with that?" And I would tell him, "I don't know. It's boring in a sense." So he'd find ways to actually make it fun for me to study, and yeah,
Hmm.
so
Okay.
I'd enjoy studying in a sense, or he would give me a reason why I would study. So he also told me, "Look, this is the saying he kept telling me, which is in Arabic. It's he said تتعب الحين ترتاح بعدين, which means you get tired now and then you can rest later." Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. One thing I don't think you entirely want to speak, or I don't know how much you want to go into that, but certain cultures are known to be more physical too. Um, like, have you had any interactions with that, or is it like rather not in there?
But no, I mean, it depends from family to family. Me, not too much, in a sense. So yeah,
Okay.
that's all I can really say about it for now. Because I don't know how other people were raised here. Every family has a different way of raising
Different
their
way.
kids. So
Okay. Okay. Well, then moving on. I think it would be interesting to mention that Kuwait itself doesn't have any taxes, right?
yeah, it surprises a lot of people. Yeah, we have 0% income tax. So
Mm-hmm.
pretty much, you get your full salary when you buy products from certain shops. You don't have to pay a tax on top of that, or they don't take income tax from you. So yeah, there's zero income tax
Hmm.
when it comes to the thing. I think the only times that you will be, well, not you personally, someone who would be taxed, it would be the suppliers or traders would be taxed. So when they import things,
Import stuff.
there's
Okay.
probably like taxes on that. That's about it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's interesting in particular for like I don't know. Here in Austria, you have rather
Hmm.
high taxes you have to pay.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I experienced that myself.
Like it's 19 or 20%. I'm not sure anymore. But depending on your income, like in which class you are, generally like the maximum you can pay is like 50% of your income as taxes. So like you
Wow.
get like half of what you actually would earn goes like to the state for, all sorts of stuff like for restorations, for projects, for social care and all that stuff. Like we do have free healthcare here. So that is a big advantage. Like you guys don't have any free healthcare or is it?
Well, we do have free healthcare and free education,
Mhm.
which is nice. Um, you know, personally, I would wish that they would kind of improve, even though they are free.
Mhm.
But I mean, the government like really does help us with that kind of things, with like free education and free healthcare, because not a lot of places in the world offer that kind of service generally. So having free healthcare and free education is definitely nice. When it comes to healthcare, in my experience, it was good,
Mhm.
right? But sometimes when it comes to extreme or unknown illnesses that are not very common, in a sense, or rare illnesses, I would have to go to a private hospital as sad as it is.
Right.
Because, sometimes they don't have all the equipment, or there will be a lot of people since it's free. So you have long lines and whatnot, and I don't have personally the time for that.
Okay, you would go to a private doctor in that sense and pay with your own
Yeah,
money for
yeah,
like a special treatment.
yeah, in a sense.
Okay.
But this is for like extreme cases,
Yeah.
right? So, free education, I don't have any experience in that personally because I went to a private school,
Mm.
so I can't really explain what is going on in there. So yeah, I have no experience in that, so I can't really talk about it.
What I'm gonna ask now is, you actually get like certain budgets for studying, right? But how does it work if you go to your private school, which you have to pay for, right? But you also get like
Right.
money for studying or for.
Yeah. Oh, I know what you mean. So private schools, when you're in high school, middle school, and or elementary, you don't get paid in a sense.
Mhm.
So you'd have to, of course, it's a private school, so you got to pay, and there's fees on top of that. So it's just normal, like anywhere else in the world. And then when you become a university student, we have a Ministry of Higher Education, and what they do is, depending on your GPA by the end of high school, after you get your diploma.
What is a GPA for people who don't know?
GPA, well, I don't know what it stands for exactly, but it's pretty much where they take all your grades, and the maximum amount of GPA you can receive is 4.0. And pretty much anything that is above 3 is very good, or you will be accepted. Anything lower is pretty much you're gonna have to like pull some strings or maybe work a little bit harder to achieve that. But GPA pretty much means it's your overall score during high school, and universities and some certain places would need to look at that, depending on where you go, of course. But anyways, with the Ministry of Higher Education, they would look at your GPA, depending on where you want to study and what kind of degree you want. This, of course, will differentiate on what they're asking. So, as an example, in the medical field, they might need a GPA of 3.5 out of 4, so you can actually get a scholarship. And in business, you might need a minimum of 2.7 out of 4 to get accepted into for their scholarship. So I'm studying currently business accounting. So I didn't really need to have a high GPA, and in high school I didn't do the best, I'll be honest. So I got around 2.93. So thankfully I was still accepted, but right now they accept my scholarship, and I'm now in a university studying. And how it works is, as soon as they accept it, they'll be like, okay, you got this approval paper, and now you can go to this said university that you want and show them the paper. Then they will contact with the ministry and to get everything organized in terms of paying the fees and making sure that everything is sorted. And on top of that, what the ministry offers, depending if you are studying in Kuwait or abroad, if you are in Kuwait, you get paid about 600 euros, like per month for as a student. This is more for, paying for books, gas, transportation, transportation fees, food, water, and anything you need covered. And if you travel abroad, they would give you more, because you need to get rent and whatnot, so you need to be covered a lot more. And I think they would be getting around, best guess, I don't know how much they actually get, but maybe 800 to 1,000 euros.
Solid.
Give or take. But I know from you, based on your reaction with that, I don't think you got any, right? Or anything with that system.
For school?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we for the biggest part, if you go studying here, it will be free if it's not a private school. Right. Like, if you go to private school, you have to pay. Obviously, like, it's becoming more and more. In the US and Canada, it's pretty much you have to pay for pretty much everything if you don't have a scholarship.
Okay.
But here it's free for the biggest part if you go to a public one. But you don't get anything, unlike in Denmark or in your country. Like, you would get a little bit for being there.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough.
Yeah.
What about you, though? How does growing up in Europe is like? What was it? Wait, hold on. Not just in Europe. You are both. So you have 2 citizenships, right? Which is
Canadian and Austrian.
Right. So how did you grow up with those 2 nationalities?
That is a difficult question to answer. Well, I was like born in Montreal in the French speaking part of Canada, but I don't speak any French, nor do I really identify myself with the people there, because I never ended up growing in Montreal. Montreal is cool, has a lot of people, which are very nice. There's a certain language barrier I have with them, because if you don't speak French, it's like if you're here and you don't speak German, it just makes stuff generally difficult. But my mom and also my grandma and my grandpa were they grew up bilingual,
right? Which
never gave me a problem to communicate.
Bilingual by like they speak French,
English and French. Okay, yeah, exactly. But yeah, at the time, my dad, who was a helicopter pilot, did his license in the U.S. and did tourism flying in Hawaii. That's where he met my mother. And yeah, so I happened to live the first year of my life on Hawaii, on the island Kauai, nice. Which is like, I think, the second biggest island. But, of course, I can't remember anything. But eventually we moved to the west coast of Canada, onto Vancouver Island, all the way in the north, like one of the last cities of civilization. Then there's just forest and literally nothing out there. So the city we lived in literally just consisted of the people, like the lumberjacks, which were like the woodworkers, the fishermen, and the helicopter, the pilots, who like flew the people into the forts and stuff for building streets and just, seeing like, okay, the soil and the ground is like this consistency. Can we build streets there? Or which trees can we harvest?
Right.
yeah, but eventually my father got his last job offered, which is a helicopter pilot for EMS, like a emergency medical services, in Austria, where he is originally from. And eventually we moved back to Austria. So I came here with 3 years. So I grew up here and I moved internally a few times. But I'm back to the original city I came to when I was 3 years old. But yeah, that was sure interesting, like having a mother who speaks English and, lets you raise with like quote unquote the Canadian ways, or like her way of growing up in culture, and then having a father from Austria who lets you grow up with his way of culture. And initially I grew up trilingual, like French, German, and English, but I didn't speak enough words at a certain age, so they just decided to teach me too. So I just ended up with German and English as a mother language.
Okay.
But yeah, it's always been interesting because despite growing up here since I can think, I never was 100% part of the people here. Like, I quickly noticed, like, even mentally, I was different than the people are here locally in the city I live in Austria.
Oh, I felt that myself too, don't worry.
Yeah. Well, that's a bit of a different thing. But, like, even for me growing up here, I didn't feel like, not at home is like the wrong word. I do feel comfortable and like at home here, but I'm not 100% part of the people
social
here.
aspect.
Exactly.
Sense,
not the social aspect. Yeah, so I grew up here, and I grew up also in a different part where you don't really speak. You speak like you're right, like you don't have a dialect.
Okay.
So I kept that way of speaking when I came back to the city I live now, where you speak more dialect, and that also led to more situations where you're like, oh, you don't speak our entire accent. You're not like 100% part of us, which I wasn't to begin with, but it's, it made stuff a bit more difficult, which also made me resort to being more online with English, international speaking people, which eventually led me to play games like VR Chat, which is like a online social platform where I also met you.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, this is another thing about online. So, same story with me. I didn't not same story definitely, but I didn't realize in your town like people do like looking at you weird in a sense.
Me or you?
Well,
or
me,
us.
Yeah, you felt it indirectly, but pretty much, yeah. Ever since I arrived in Europe, I was in Munich, Germany, which is more of a melting pot. So there's a lot of nationalities there, so it's kind of normal to be there in this sense. And then when I came to Austria, I was in a lodge, or where I'm staying right now, and I'm surrounded by farmers. And this is more for the countryside of Austria.
Yeah, it was like close to Salzburg.
Yeah, so when I was there and I went to a little town, I can definitely tell that these people are not used to having foreigners. So we just got very long gazing looks from what I could tell. And same thing when I came to Dan's place. I was going from train to train. And then there was a town called Amstetten. And when I was there, I can just remember I missed the train to his town, so I went to like a cafe until he arrived, and I just sat down, put my suitcase to my right, and put my phone on the table, and I just looked to the right, and I could just see a bunch of old people just staring down at me, like down to my soul, and I was like, oh, okay, this is not very comforting. But the waiter came up, and he was very nice. He told me, what do you need? I'm like, do you speak English? He's like, yes, of course. How can I be of your service? And, I told him I needed coffee and a lovely cold glass of water, and he says, all right, on the way. I just enjoyed myself. I had a coffee, had water, but I could just feel those eyeballs right behind the back of my head, so I was like...
Piercing through.
Yeah, like literally piercing through my soul as if I did like a crime, almost. So it didn't bother me, in a sense. It just made me feel a little bit uncomfortable, just because of the amount of time that it took them to look at me, and I was like... Yeah, I need to leave this place. So I finished my coffee and I finished my water. I'm like, I'd like to pay. I paid by my card and just walked outside and walked back to the train station. And then I saw Dan pick me up, and I told him the story, and he just laughed because, I don't blame him for laughing. But yeah, it is insane. Like I felt it before, but me right now is 20 years old, and last time I traveled was 4 or 5 years ago. back then I did not feel it because I was much younger, so I was kind of blind to it in a sense. So when I came now here in Europe and traveling alone, I can like
Notice
really,
it more.
yeah, I can notice it more, especially when I'm traveling alone.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Well, I think like you said, like in Munich, you have like more a melting pot. The same thing happens in Vienna. You have also a way more melting pot, and I noticed like of course way more cultures. And only recently I started to pick up, hey, there's actually quite a lot of people like speaking English there, and like I never was a lot in Vienna,
right.
but recently it was more there, and you notice a lot of different cultures than you did before, a lot of languages, and that's something I like. I really support. But yeah, being here more on the countryside, people are more conservative, old thinking, especially like the elder people happen to be, well, you can say actually racist to a big degree.
Well, yeah, I mean,
No one will hurt you or like
right, but again,
do anything
this is
bad.
this
But
is something I want to point out. Like, there's racism everywhere, right? No matter how it comes in many shapes and forms, right? Whether it's physical or or verbal, you will see racism like everywhere.
mm,
In Austria, it's not that bad. Like, it's actually, wait, I'm gonna rephrase that. It's not bad at all. Like, you only get weird looks, and weird looks aren't necessarily bad. It's just, imagine if you're living in a town and then some stranger just randomly turns up and he does not look like you or one of your people. So you would be getting looks as they're trying to just identify you. Do they think of you as a threat or as a foe? Or as a, no, not a foe. A threat or a friend, pretty much. So it's just a little bit of confusion and curiosity. And I think us as human beings, we're, curious creatures, so it's normal for them. But if I see someone staring at me for a while, just like in a innocent way and not in a violent way,
yeah,
of course you can't really identify that. Each person's different. I would probably just go up to him, like, "Hey, you doing all right?" And then make sure that he feels comfortable and safe. And I wouldn't want to, make him uncomfortable in a sense.
yeah.
But there's people who get pretty verbal and physical. Like I've definitely I've not experienced physical.
But not here.
Yeah,
No.
definitely not here. No,
Okay.
I definitely did not experience physical. Verbal though, I did experience it online more. I've yet to experience it in real life, which I think I'm prepared for it. I'm not really. I don't think I'm gonna be. Yeah, no, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna throw hands or start fighting and whatnot. I'm probably just gonna be, you know, be aware of it, be ready for it, not take it personally in a sense. Because if I start taking it personally, then I get emotional, and if I get emotional, I get physical, and so on and so on and so on. So I just have to have that mindset of just being ready for the unexpected.
Right.
And when that time comes, I'm like, all right, thanks, dude, appreciate it. Just walk the other way.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm just trying to understand like elder people, why are they acting this way. I think you have to understand that most elder people from now on are like either children who have been like in the middle of World War II or at the end, and there's always been like a certain hostility against people who were not like from Europe, because everyone else, like non-German speaking, would be kind of like the foe, the enemy, the East and stuff. And there's for some reason always been like a certain hostility towards Osmanic people, or everything that is like not white here, which is just like the old people. But I can't really.
I mean, look, in terms of Islam and people being, I guess there's a new word for it now called Islamophobes or Islamophobic.
Yeah.
Pretty much what happens is, I'd like to blame the American media for this. Because they don't really put in the facts. They're like, okay, so this happened in Iraq or Syria, right? And what's happening in Iraq and Syria is nowhere near where I live, or it's nowhere near the other GCC countries, or like that stuff does not, seep into us, right? This is like a war that is happening, and this is a whole different group. Like, I'll use an example. ISIS, right? They're called Islamic extremists or whatnot, but all they've done is pretty much rip one page out of a holy book, and it's talking about war, and they're like, yeah, this is our whole religion, right? That is now their main belief. And that's what they believe in, and they went to such extreme points to prove their points, where they had physical. They start doing bombings, whatnot, and of course, people get involved in the war. They try to disable them, whatnot. So the ideologies of Islam is all about war. People shun the people or just put them down. We don't like to give people freedom. That kind of ideology. It's not true at all. Like, I think Islam is a religion of peace, not pacifism, peace, right? Because in our holy book, there's stuff about war and whatnot, but only in self-defense. It's never about invading, or it's never about attacking people without, good reason. It's all about self-defense, how to stand your ground, that kind of stuff. So when people misread, sometimes they misinterpret the whole religion, and sometimes this one thing they think will shape the whole religion, which is not the truth. So I think if you want to learn about a religion or a certain ideology, I think you should read and see the full picture instead of just reading one line and you're like, okay, yeah, this is the religion. Yep, I made my mind. It's like, this is it. It's like, no, it's not. It's not the case at all. So yeah, for people who are Islamophobic, I just don't think they're educated enough to know what it's about, and they have not met someone who is actually from there or of that religion.
So a lot of people just have the wrong picture, generally.
The wrong picture, pretty much.
I mean, my town here specifically has like a history also of the Turks invading here. Actually,
yes.
I mean, that's like very long back. But I suppose like through actions like that, the overall image just has been passed on to like the next generation, and that hostility has kept up until today. Like until the point where I'd say like our generation, or like let's say like people from who were born like in the 80s, 90s, like are more internationally connected, that they got like the better picture of being international, and that not everyone is a bad person who like doesn't look like us, right?
I mean, I'd like for people to know, or I'd like to put this fact out there, that Arabs and Turks are way two different things, right?
Absolutely,
yeah.
Right. But for a lot of people here, it is not.
That's right. Yeah, I know. But I'm saying, like, for, the people who are listening, like, who don't know about this, Turks and Arabs are different cultures, right? Different language. Sure, same religion, right? There are Turks that are Muslim, and there are Turks that are Christian also, right? So two whole different people. And the Ottoman Empire back then were very strong, and they all cared a lot about conquering. Keep going and going and going and going until they reached. Yeah, they reached what was it, Jerusalem back in the day. So that was a whole debate, whatnot going on there, and they just went up north and they took the Romans and etc. So I'd understand why people would hate the Arabs or Islam in general because of that. This is just a bad history, because Ottoman Empire were conquerors, and I'm assuming also since the Roman Empire was there, it was also funded or was also a part of the Catholic Church, which also Christians get a bad rep about, or Christians will think about Arabs as crazy or savages or whatnot, all the above that are negative parts about Islam. So yeah, I mean, I don't understand why they would think that, and I just hope they read a book about Islam, or they'd read the Holy Book itself. Like, if you go online, there's millions of translations in English for the Holy Book, but just be careful which translation to read, because there's people who actually translate it wrong.
To steer people in a certain direction.
I mean, look, there's people who steer it, and there's people who don't. The people who don't sometimes make a mistake, because
they just interpret it wrong.
Yeah, because there's some certain stuff in Arabic that can be translated in English, in a sense, because our book is not written by someone or the Prophet himself. It's written by God, right? So that's why it's hard to translate in any other language. So if you want to learn about the Quran at its full extent, you'd have to learn Arabic. And learning Arabic is
difficult.
It's difficult if you want to learn dialect and if you want to communicate with people. If you just want to read the Quran, then just read like formal Arabic, the official Arabic language. Then you'll be fine.
Okay. Well, going back to talking about everyday life. How would you say your normal day or free day looks like in terms of going shopping, getting to places, meeting up with friends and stuff.
So if I'm in university, right? So I'm gonna talk about my experience for the past year or two or a few months. So it used to be wake up, right, wash, eat, go to university, right, study a little bit, then play a little bit online, and then sleep.
So the typical students.
Right. So I'd be doing this from, Sunday to Thursday. And the reason why I say Sunday to Thursday, by the way, for people who don't know, in the Middle East, our weekends are Fridays and Saturdays, not Saturdays and Sundays.
Yeah.
And if you're wondering why, it's because Friday we have mosques, just like Christians have church on Sundays. So that's why we moved it up today. But anyways, so that's my usual schedule. And then when the weekend comes, I usually just just relax, just not do anything the whole day, be very unproductive. And that's usually how it's been. And sometimes, just sometimes, I would go out with my buddies. We'd usually go eat at a restaurant, right? Hang out at a cafe, have a chat. Because if I'm hanging with my friends, we're usually just having social time. So we'd usually just talk. And talk and talk and talk and talk. And I don't mind. I don't mind talking. Like, it's one of the best things to do. And if we decide to do an activity sometimes, to change it up, then we'd maybe go camping or go to the beach or, some kind of outdoor activity. But that's really about it. I also sometimes go to the shooting range.
Shooting range.
Yeah, from time to time.
Yeah, I remember you telling me, well, during the day, which temperatures do you have there?
Well, recently, I don't know what the temperature is since I've been here in Europe. But here, let me open up and we can check all together. It's above 40. I can guarantee you that. It's definitely, it never goes down. Look, if it's in winter, it's always, above 4. Oh, no, actually. Kuwait at the moment at 8:37 p.m. It is 38 degrees Celsius, which is hot still for an evening time. Mm-hmm. But looking at the upcoming weeks, it's going to be 42 and above, with the max being at 48.
Jesus Christ, that's basically like hell on earth, temperature-wise.
I mean, as I said, I have a friend who said it as a joke, which is, you found a place that is like hell and you have decided to make it your living space. I'm like, yep, and I'm proud of it.
Yeah.
I mean, look, man, it's hot. I'm definitely not going to deny that, but you do get to a point where you're kind of built for it, in a sense, or you get used to it.
Used to it, simply.
Yeah, you get used to it. And the thing that troubles me the most out of our whole weather is just the sandstorms. So if a sandstorm happened, you've seen me come home before, right? And then I remember I was coming home and I hopped on a call.
On our Discord server.
And then Dan was there, and Dan, he can explain what happened.
Yeah, so he just basically joining would cough like all the time, like, AJ, what's wrong? What happened? Like, oh shit, like I coughed blood. Like he coughed actual blood, and it was like, what happened? And then he's like, a sandstorm happened, and it's like, it can hit you out of nowhere, basically.
Yeah. Well, we can expect it most of the time, but there's sometimes where it just happens. Mm-hmm. Right? So just sudden strong winds, and then it picks up like sand out of the desert and slowly
it hits
just
you
builds
without
up and then
knowing.
Just comes in all of a sudden. So yeah.
Yeah, that must be horrible, being in the middle of a sandstorm. You showed me pictures of like getting into a sandstorm on the highway.
Like literally you can't see anything. Well, it depends on the sandstorm. There's light sandstorms, right? Where you can like still see around, but anything farther than like 900 meters and more, you can't see, which is safe to drive, I'd say, right? To an extent. But there's sandstorms that are very heavy and thick where you can't even see 10 meters in front of you.
That's crazy.
Right, or you can. Like, I remember I was going up a bridge and there's like a 6-lane highway to my left, or supposed to be a 6-lane highway, and I could not. It was like about 50, 60 meters away from me, and I could not even see the highway itself. All I could see is the railing that starts.
And you still keep the temperatures of 45 degrees.
And still maintain the temperature is still hot. I'd expected because of winds it would cool down, but it's not the case apparently, because I think the sand retains a little bit of heat. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I'm no scientist, but I think that's the main reason why. But when a sandstorm hits, you do one of two things. You make sure that the cycling, if you are driving, that is, so make sure that the air conditioning is cycling inside the car, and you turn on your emergency blinkers. So
no one drives into.
You want to make sure that anybody who's behind you is not going to ram at you at full speed. So yeah, you gotta,
makes sense. Yeah,
that's the first two things you do, just like in a fog. And I'm assuming you guys experienced fogs over here.
Yeah, fog we do have a lot because we live like in a tail, like in a between mountains basically, and like the fog accumulates down here. So yeah, we have a lot of fog.
Oh, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I remember waking up at the place that I'm staying. There's so we're surrounded by mountains. Well, there's this huge valley that goes down the road. I woke up at around 5:30 a.m. and you can just see the clouds like coming down. And they're slowly,
like over the mountains.
Yeah, over the mountains and just like going through it. And I think it got very low where it's almost touching the road.
Yeah.
And it was, of course, you can tell that it's a little bit humid if you enter that cloud. Of course, you start getting sweaty a little bit and wet and whatnot. But it's a beautiful sight. But I hope that thing doesn't come near me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it doesn't hurt you in comparison to a sandstorm.
No, it definitely doesn't physically hurt me. I just don't want to feel tired or sweaty or any of the above. So that's why.
That's fair, yeah. Well, okay. Where can we hook on to the part? I wanted to talk about military as well. Ooh. How it is like in
the
Kuwait.
Mandatory services?
Yeah.
Yeah, so after 1990, the Iraqi invasion, we started to do mandatory service, right? Of course, this is before Iraq also, so we always had mandatory service. But this is just preparation to make sure that every civilian has not combat experience, but is trained in combat. So if anything were to happen, they'd pull them out of reserves and actually prepare them for quote-unquote war, which I don't think is going to happen because Kuwait is known to be a peaceful country, very neutral one. So yeah, that's pretty much it. But yeah, so as soon as you hit the age of 18, before you get your license and all that and your ID renewed, you'd have to go to the military sign-up immediately. And as soon as you're there, they will ask you for your ID so they can check. And once they take your ID, you fill up this huge book. It's pretty thick. I'd say it's about 6 inches thick.
Jeez.
Give or take. And it would have every single name of a person who has signed up.
Wow.
Their date of birth and the number of their ID. So yeah, he told me to fill all this information in. So I'd take the pen that he gave me, wrote my full name, wrote the date of birth, wrote my ID number, and then he gave me like this little green card, which has all those information, and there's also my military number. So they have their own, like system in there with like a roster and everything, and there will be a number by your name. So after you sign up, you can go get your license and get your ID renewed. And in terms of when they will ask you to join the military, if you're not going to go for a university or a college degree, you'd usually just get drafted in, right? But if you got a degree, you'd work for that degree. Once you've done, the number of years you need to do, and you finally received your degrees, whether it's a diploma or a bachelor's or a master's, then they will come knock on your door and they're like, all right, it's time. It's time to roll up in the military. But of course, there's exclusions to not joining the military. Either you're the only son, which is the case for you. Which is my case. Second thing is if you have any health issues, right? And third is if you have some kind of disability that would stop you from...
Okay, makes sense.
from joining the military. And of course, with all these three things, you'd actually have to get some kind of paper proof, right? So in my case, I'd have to get like a birth certificate or some kind showing that I'm like the only son and I don't have any other brothers. And for people who are disabled or they have health issues, they'd have to get a medical report and show it to the military that, hey, I can't do my service because if I do, I might possibly be hurt physically and it could harm me and maybe even get me killed, in a sense, just being trained. Huh. But from experience, from what I heard about people, it is excruciating because
I believe that right away.
Yeah, it's because not of the training itself. The training is fine. No problem there. It's excruciating because of the heat that people have to deal with on a daily basis. And I heard there's some barracks buildings that have broken air conditioning. And people will try to sleep at night, and they sometimes can't. So yeah. That's how our military is, and I don't know a lot about yours.
Yeah,
About your
I'll get into that in a second. My other
Okay.
question is if your father were to get another child,
Oh, if
like
I had
another
another,
son,
yeah, if I had a brother,
like only the older ones have to go and like the youngest one cannot? Like or
oh
doesn't
no,
go?
yeah,
Or,
if I had a brother right now,
yeah.
I'd be rolled up in the military. No questions asked.
Okay, but it's always the youngest person who stays at home.
Uh, it doesn't mean it's the youngest or not. Like even if I went to the military, right? Once if this said younger brother grows up and he's 18, he's have to go through the same exact process I went through again.
Also, both have to go to the
Yeah,
military
both have
then.
to go. Yeah, all families go.
So only if you're one child and that's it?
Yeah, if you're on
But
the
that doesn't make sense because if both happen to die in the military,
well,
assumingly,
think of
you can't continue
yeah.
your family line.
So think of Saving Private Ryan. Remember that movie? Which, if you have not watched it, it's basically about rescuing a soldier named Private Ryan, and the reason why they're going to rescue him and to bring him back home is because he's the only brother, and all of his brothers got killed in World War II
Oh.
because his mom couldn't handle losing any more sons.
Yeah.
Right. So they actually went out of their way just to rescue one soldier and actually bring him back. So in the case of there's a war deployed and there's multiple those all the brothers are attending this said war. If three of them or two of them are dead, they're still pulling them out of the war and actually bring them home.
Okay, so as
Yeah.
long as there only one is left,
Yeah.
that's when he gets back.
As devastating as it might
Oh,
sound.
wow, okay.
then, yeah, that's the case.
I thought like only the elder brother have to go and the youngest one is like the
No.
person. Okay.
No.
Wow. Okay, that's scary.
I mean, it's war, right? So, if they, in the end of the day, if they signed up for it, they know what they're facing or what to expect. So, yeah.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, your military service. Now.
Yeah, talking about
Obviously.
our military. Well, in Austria, we are with Greek and Switzerland, the last countries in Europe that have mandatory military service.
Okay.
So in Austria, it's similar. Here, you have 6 months you have to do as soon as you turn 18, and you usually would do like after your high school.
Okay.
Before you go studying. Usually, I mean, you can do it later too, but it's difficult once you're like in your work life and stuff. You don't want to kind of get ripped out of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's 6 months here. Personally, I did the civic service, which you
Which
can
is
do
the-
instead of the military.
Just being a paramedic.
Exactly. Yeah. Not necessarily. Like, you have to state a reason. Or first you get drafted, and you have to go to the military, and then you can be there, like telling them, like, hey, you're not comfortable with wielding weapons before you actually go there, and then you can like write like or sign a formula,
Yeah, like a document.
a document which
Yeah.
states that you don't want to be at the military for, I don't know, personal reasons, for like mental reasons, whatever. And then you are being taken over the civic agency instead of the military agency, which requires you to work for 9 months instead of 6. And you can do it in different fields. Like you can work in a hospital, you can work in like an elder's home, or you can go into the EMS service like I did,
Right.
like being an actual ambulances. And it's, for the biggest part, it's like transporting people from A to B, like from hospital to hospital, from hospital, home. Yeah, which is also certainly a very interesting
I
experience.
mean, yeah.
But yeah, the military itself is more, in my eyes, like doesn't have that much sense for our country in particular, because it's like we're not very big, and if it really were to, we would have to defend our country. I think our little numbers will not be able to like withstand like a bigger country's military.
You'd be surprised because you guys have one advantage, which is terrain, right? So you guys got mountains. Like most vehicles.
Only in the southwest.
Yes.
Like Vienna region is still very
Yeah.
flat.
Well, let's say that area has been taken over, right? And troops are starting to push to the rest of the country. You can probably maintain your ground pretty heavily, like if you think about it. Like you can go up, because you guys are trained in that kind of terrain, I'm assuming. In the military, they train them how to maneuver through mountains and tactics and etc. and so on and so on. So
That's possible. I think it's more the case for Switzerland because every
Yeah.
path leading to their country actually leads like through mountains. So.
Well, what's funny about Switzerland is in World War II, they were very neutral, right?
Yeah.
And as a backup plan, they actually have dynamite.
Yeah, they had explosives on all of their bridges. Yeah,
so
that's insane.
they had like dynamite and explosives on their bridges. So if they were to be invaded by Germany at the time, the Nazi party, they would just blow that. And they actually had hidden bunkers and hidden cannons on top of like certain mountains and Alps.
Yeah, I know. Every household or every city has to have like a bunker, and for every household that has.
And the funny thing is, there's houses in Switzerland where they still have a bunker, as you said, and well, today people turn those bunkers either to like a laundromat or even a wine cellar, from what I've seen. So I find it funny more than anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's pretty interesting with the military service here.
Like the other thing we also do is like for natural catastrophes, like if there's floodings and stuff, like of course those are the people who help out. But in a bigger sense, like our military could not defend us really against like a bigger force. Yeah. So it's, you know, I personally see more sense in being able to help the people actively in like a medical field, be like an accident or like just taking care of them.
Yeah.
Feels more like I'm helping the actual society here than being in the military.
Okay, fair enough.
But that's totally a personal preference.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, I guess that works out. I mean, at the end of the day, if you do your service, you do service, and when you do it, you don't have to do it against the thing. Thank God for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely interesting topics and things we talked about. Like, yeah, culture is way different. But well, there's still small things I'd say that we share. But for the majority, I'd say 90% of this stuff, it's very different. But yeah, like I've been to Europe, like I'm here in Austria, right in front of you and everything. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty great.
Well, then I still have another question. What would you say are the things that you enjoy here in comparison to at home? Like,
well, one that is a no-brainer, the nature. Right, you know, as we said, Kuwait is pretty much yellow and blue, right? Yellow being the sand and blue being the sky, because it's always clear skies and just sand everywhere. Over here, you got mountains, hills, trees, bushes. You know, I can keep going, like clouds, rocks. There's a lot of things you can look at here instead of just Kuwait. And sometimes when you wake up and you go to the balcony, you have a cup of coffee, and you can just see the beautiful scenery. That changes your mentality way different. It like gives you almost like an encouragement, a sense of appreciation, right? But I'd say also here pretty much the grocery stores or like the food also is a lot fresher, right? Because since Kuwait is a little bit of a desert, it's hard to grow certain vegetables and fruits. We do grow some, like we grow tomatoes and whatnot. But there's some certain stuff that we can't grow here and we have to import it. And of course, it will taste very different than if you import something that takes 1-2 days to arrive, and then something that's literally you can just pick it off the ground and eat it immediately, right? Same thing with dairy, of course, and meats and everything. Yeah, pretty much. But the thing I have to worry about Europe, though, when I'm here is definitely the food. Because in Islam, we can't have pork. And sadly, there's some places here that, you know, serve non-halal food. Which is, you know, I understand why. You know, their whole lives they've been fine with no halal food. And I think it would be a little bit more expensive, too.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah. And second thing is alcohol. So...
Right. You know, yeah, we didn't talk about that yet.
Yeah, so things being cooked here with alcohol or just sometimes like cocktails or whatnot, it can fool. I've seen some I've seen like some Muslims who got fooled. They didn't know, at least they thought that cocktails were just like a fruit drink, but they actually had a little bit of alcohol in it. And
Whoops.
Yeah, they had accidental alcohol.
Yeah, for most people who don't know, like in Kuwait, it's actually strictly forbidden to possess alcohol.
Yeah, it is illegal to have alcohol or drink it or whatnot, and you can be imprisoned up to 10 years. Of course, I could be mistaken.
Yeah.
I know it's a long time in prison, but yeah, that's by law. That's how strict it is.
It's crazy.
Yeah, but no, honestly, I'm enjoying my trip in Europe. Definitely meeting new faces. talking to different cultures, getting to learn about them, getting educated by it also, and why people live in a certain way, and they pretty much how they cope with it on a daily basis. So I like to learn about different people from different places because, everyone lives differently.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, me personally, I'm living in I wouldn't say in a life of luxury, but definitely a life of comfort, I'd say, in terms of, I can get everything that I need. Right? But I have to pay that to not have very comfortable living conditions in terms of weather.
Yeah.
Well, here in Austria, like, you got this beautiful view, and you can go outdoors, you can do outdoor activities and everything, and fresh food and everything. But I'm assuming you guys have financial, struggles. As I said, you guys have taxes and things tend to get got inflation recently.
Yeah,
from what
inflation
I've heard.
insane recently.
So our economy in Kuwait is
Stable.
Stable. Where here is a little bit spiking back forth and down. But yeah.
Political situation here is a different topic for sure.
Yeah, that's a whole another day for that. But yeah, definitely. If I was to say the difference of cultures here you guys are a lot more free in a sense. You guys have a certain way of living.
Mm-hmm.
You like to keep to yourselves. You're a little bit more private. That's how I would describe Austria. But in Kuwait, I'd say we're very socially open in a sense. We like talking to people. We like to socialize, stay connected, and everything. Right, and we like to not open up all the time. We like to keep to ourselves also, but to an extent, that is private life in a sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, definitely two interesting opposite cultures that got mixed together. So, yeah.
Like, most of your life you actually spend indoors because during the summer it's like you don't want to be outside.
I mean, I don't have to spend indoors. I choose to do so because of the comfort reasons, mainly. I can go to a gym, right? I can go to a gym or
I can go to a gym whenever I want.
Yeah, I could go to a gym and work out, or I can go with my buddies on a daily basis. But it is very uncomfortable, and also Kuwait is a small country, so I've kind of been everywhere. And I kind of like seeing new things on a daily basis, or make things a little bit more interesting. And Austria is a big country, or like
small in comparison.
bigger than my country, which is
Fair.
Kuwait. Like I have from my town where I was staying at, and my lodge to here was already 4 or 5 hours by trade.
Yeah, you kind of drove like a curve.
Yeah, so it was like around a curve because there's mountains that was blocking the way, but makes sense. But yeah, so definitely that. If I had a choice of where to live, if there was no money involved at all, like I'd definitely Austria in terms of living is way better for me. Yeah. But no, two different interesting cultures. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to our first episode of our podcast, which is the name was Hang in There.
Hang in there, yeah.
Which is a new little one. It was supposed to be done during COVID, but we got a little bit busy with our lives.
Yeah.
So
like, I have 2 end questions for you though. First one is, you told me like sleeping over at my place has been how long ago for you? Like sleeping over at a friend's place?
Oh, 6 years ago.
6 years ago.
Yeah. Reason is, of course, in Islam, people wear hijabs and whatnot, and people like to stay a little bit private in their own house. They want to do what they want in the house, so they don't feel limited because there's a guest here, or they feel the stress of it. So that's the main reason why. So yeah, that's why I slept at a friend's place 6 years ago. But if I was invited to a beach house or anywhere else, I'd of course, I'd stay in the place.
Wouldn't be a problem. Yeah. Like you also always have like a room to offer.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I'm like here the most. Yeah, you can sleep on the floor, no problem. In my room.
No.
I don't mind.
If it was the case, if I was gonna sleep on a couch or I was gonna sleep on the floor, I think I would have gotten a hotel. And there is a hotel in your town that is not very far from here.
Yeah, well, probably not the standard you're used to.
Yeah, but I got my own bed, so it's fine.
And the last thing, toilet situation.
Oh, we're gonna be talking about that. All right, so okay, so as Muslims, instead of washing ourselves with toilet paper, we use bidets, or we use water to clean ourselves.
Like, for people who don't know what that is, like Japanese?
It doesn't have to be Japanese, but pretty much cleaning yourself after you're done with the bathroom with water, pretty much, instead of just paper. You got to make sure that you're properly cleaned in a sense.
Which is interesting.
Yes, interesting for you. That's normal for me, but I realized that when I came at Dan's place, I was like, wait, I forgot about the bathroom situation. I was like, wait, hold on. So I go to the bathroom and I just see like toilet paper and there was no bidet around. And I was like, oh, so I'm going to have to go through like full man cave again. So like literally we're looking for a bottle of water, which he did not have one. So instead we used a Japanese tea bottle that he had. So yeah, I'd fill that up with water and I'd do what I needed to do to clean myself after I am done using the bathroom. Which was I mean, I've done that multiple times before, so it's fine. It worked out in the end.
Difficult, like also when I was in China, like you also have like only squat toilets. And you can imagine these squat toilets and toilet paper.
They're good for you, by the way. No. I'm not gonna get in detail why it's good for you because hearing it in detail is a little bit disturbing.
Yeah, in terms of like how your body like position is in. Yes.
Yeah, because that's how humans a few thousand years ago went to the bathroom.
Yeah,
they squatted because there's no toilet back then. So
right.
Yeah.
Well, in that sense, that is a good topic 10 that for today.
I assume so, but yeah. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining our podcast.
Yes.
Of Hang In There. We're probably going to be recording a second episode sometime in the future. We don't know when. This is just a little bit of a test. But yeah, thank you all for joining us, and we will see you all later.
Yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. Hope to see you guys in the next episode, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.